living your life in a sense as a sportscaster, I think is a great way to be creative and encourage that reading. So you can say, I am turning on the water, whoosh, look at how fast the water is coming out. And now there's bubbles everywhere. I'm scrubbing this plate. This plate is a circle. I mean, there are just so many ways to make these mundane activities fun. And your kids are always listening. They're always hearing that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Literacy Launchpad, Read, Learn, Grow. Today's episode is focused on play and learn literacy through everyday activity. And you're in for a really good episode here because let me tell you, our guest today, and I'll let them introduce themselves here in a second, has so many golden nuggets to share that even before we hit record, I couldn't stop talking to them. So without further ado, I will let our guests introduce themselves here because I want them to tell their story and share who they are. Thank you for being here. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Dr. Jaclyn Sisskind. I am a pediatrician and an assistant professor of pediatrics at a local university.
Jaclyn, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. As you can tell, I couldn't really hold back my laughter, but it's more of like a little school kid giggle than it is for anything else because I was like, this conversation is so much fun. And like, I think parents, and even if parents let their kids listen to this conversation, there's so much joy and love and just so many wonderful things. I can't say how grateful I am to have this opportunity to connect with you. Before we hit the record button, I was just saying like, I don't get to meet people that often that live in this kind of cross between being in the medical field and having this strong sense of passion towards literacy. You mentioned that you're a doctor of pediatrics and you're also in the field of teaching. Tell the listeners in the audience a little bit more about how those two things blend together and how did you come into this space of having such a strong sense and passion for literacy?
And thanks for asking because it's my favorite thing to talk about. I am really passionate about kids having access to books and caregivers and kids using time together to engage in reading and exploring and the development that encourages for both the caregiver and the child. So I am a local pediatrician. The teaching comes in because I teach medical students who come through my office every day and also give lectures to medical students who are not yet doing their rotation. So they're earlier in their learning about how we can use literature to connect with patients and also just basic pediatric care. So when you come into my office, it's a regular pediatrician's office. We see kids that are coming in for their healthy checkups everywhere from that first visit out of the hospital all the way up to age 21. And we also see kids who are sick for any number of reasons. And so when you come in for a well child visit to my office, if you're between the ages of 6 months and 5 years old, you're going to get a developmentally relevant book during your visit that the doctor, whether it be me or one of my partners, is going to use for the developmental screening in the office. So instead of just asking the parent questions, can your child move something from one hand to the other? Can your child play peekaboo? We actually use the book in the room to test those skills and then demonstrate to parents, here's how you can use a book to play with your child, even as young as 6 months old. And that program is funded through a national initiative called Reach Out and Read, and they give the books for that age. And then if you're an older child in my office for your checkup, often after I have a discussion with you about, school and your favorite foods and questions you have, et cetera, all the regular doctor appointment stuff. I always ask, what's a good book that you read this year? And if they don't like to read, I say, what's a bad book you were forced to read this year? And then 9 times out of 10, I give them a book to bring home, either a graphic novel or a book that has some interest of theirs based on something we discussed that day. And occasionally, if kids are in for a sick visit, they'll leave with a book too, just because I love being able to give kids books, especially if they're going to be down and out, laying in bed for a couple days with the flu.
Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. I mean, to go into any doctor's office, but yet alone a pediatric office, and walk out with a book, which is going to help a parent connect with their child better in deeper learning and development, sends just goosebumps down my spine in the best way possible. Can you tell me a little bit more about how you uncovered the need for this, and also help people understand like why this is so important when you're having this relationship that you're developing and fostering with your patients and the parents of your patients?
Sure. I'm very chatty with my patients. I think it makes them feel more comfortable. In pediatrics, we often don't wear white coats. We sit on the table with the child. We do everything we can to make them feel more comfortable. And I think, as human beings, we like to talk about the things that we know and the things that we're comfortable with. So if I have a patient who is very into sports, I will usually ask them peripheral questions. Tell me about your season. Tell me about your favorite position. But I don't know a lot about that. And kids can source out really quickly when you're lying. You can never fake it with a kid. So I tend to ask questions in the realm where I'm most comfortable, and I know a lot about and read a lot of children's literature. And so that's the place where I've landed. Almost every kid, whether they are a really dedicated reader or not, has to read for school or has had a teacher read to them at school. So at least it's a common ground that we can talk about. And I think that's where it started. And then the more I started reading children's books on my own and reading with my own kids, I have 3 and they're all at different reading levels and different interests, the more I became comfortable talking to kids about this. And I think that also so much research shows that when your doctor brings something up, it's viewed as important, right? A lot of this research has been around smoking cessation. So, when adults go to the doctor, if their doctor actually talks about quitting smoking, they're more likely to think seriously about quitting smoking. And I think that works here too. When parents leave the office, they expect I'm going to talk about nutrition and physical activity and brushing their teeth. But when I take the time in what's, a pretty condensed visit, when I actually take the time to dedicate 1 or 2 minutes to talk about reading at home, I think that gives it a level of importance to the parents. Like, this is something we should really be talking about more. This is something I should be encouraging my child to do.
Facts all around, right? But I think also what you're kind of creating is a stronger connection to, like, with we as humans, as people, we trust that, our doctors are experts, right? They're the ones that are there to ensure that we're healthy and we're thriving and we're living and having the best years of our lives. And especially as a child, where there's so many things that I don't want to say could go wrong, but like in the development phases, that relationship be built with the child and creating trust, but then also with the parent or the caregiver and helping them feel much more comfortable in their own children or child's development is so critical. So like, yeah, that totally makes sense that you have the unique opportunity to encourage parents to engage and play and learn with their kids. What are some of the things that you do when kids come to your office? I know you mentioned that you kind of sit with them for a couple of minutes and you walk through a book and sort of that kind of engagement, but is there anything in particular that stands out to you with what a parent or a child can expect when they come to your office and visit?
Yeah, I think it's, expecting everything you would from a typical pediatrics office. You get weighed, you get measured. We talk about whether or not you need immunizations that day. We do a full physical exam, and then asking questions based on the child's age. Younger children, I'm pretty much just talking to their parent. But once a child is like 3 years old, I start to engage with them directly first, and then the parents fill in supplemental information. When you talked about what to expect, so for the kids in that 6-month to 5-year range, when we're actually bringing the book into the room and using it to do developmental screening, I'm hoping in doing that, the parents are seeing ways that they can play at home with the book. And when I'm doing the screening, I will even say to the parent, here's some great things you can do at home. So for example, an 18-month-old that I saw yesterday, I had a board book that I brought in that had all different colors and fruits and vegetables and animals. It was just like, a my first words kind of book. And so we went through and I said, let's find the cats. And I had them point to the cat. And then I said, where's the strawberry? And they didn't know strawberry. So I took their finger and I said, I see the strawberry. And I patted, right on the strawberry. And I said to the parents, it's fine that they don't know the word strawberry. Even in just playing the where is the I see the tap, 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 there it is. That's all the building blocks of language and learning. Also playing games like, can I have the book, please? And then getting it and then giving that back and saying thank you and passing back and forth. For, a 2-year-old, I'll show a parent how to set the book up like a upside down tent on the exam table. And if they have a little toy car or something with them, we'll drive the car through the tunnel. We'll roll the car down the ramp and say wee and vroom vroom. And all of those things are ways that you can use the book as an object of play. And I think that takes the pressure off of parents when they say, oh, my child doesn't sit still. They don't want to sit and read with me. Reading doesn't have to be reading the words. It can be letting your child turn the pages at the speed that they want, or knocking on the book to make noise, or pretending the book is a cell phone because they're mostly rectangular shape now, holding it up to their ear and saying hello and having a conversation back and forth. Reading is time spent with the child and using the book as a catalyst for that time. And so that's a lot of what I show them in those first few visits. And then as kids get closer to, 4 and 5, I'll have them point out pictures in the book. Can you show me somebody who's happy? Can you show me a face that looks sad? Or we'll look at a picture on the page, or maybe I'll give a little bit of the story and say, what do you think is going to happen next when we turn the page? And so when we think about literacy from emergent to alphabet fluency, words and patterns, and then getting up to advanced reading and comprehension, that prediction based on that visual intelligence and understanding the natural flow of things shows great developmental qualities. And a lot of times the parents are really proud. They're like, oh my gosh, look, they knew they were going to jump off that diving board and the next page was going to be a big splash, right? And it's very exciting for them. I think it makes them feel like they're doing a good job because they are. And it shows that they can connect at home with books in that way.
I love that. And something that came to mind as you were sharing those really important tidbits is that you're an educator in second nature to what you do. And you're also educating the parent in something that they may often, if it's a first time parent or caregiver, may not even know how to do that thing. And it almost takes that level of tension and uncomfortableness. Am I doing enough to help my child, to help my kid in these really pivotal, critical stages of their development as a child into, whether it's baby, toddler, adolescence, that they may not get anywhere else because they don't know where to go to get that, right? So it's just a beautiful thing to see that. One of the things that oftentimes I find, well, I guess I hear more so than I find because I don't have kids of my own, is what are ways that parents can encourage their children in creatively fostering literacy? And what I mean by that is it doesn't have to be overly complicated as you kind of just described, but what are some things that can really be engaging for parents that may struggle with coming up with creative ideas?
I think it's a great question. And to speak back to a point you made just a moment ago before answering it, you're right. I think every caregiver is wondering, am I doing enough? It's very hard to be a caregiver right now because almost all of us are walking around with a phone in our pockets. And I akin that to having a horde of screaming people always saying, you're not doing this right. You're not doing enough. I can do it better. Have you considered this? And it's inescapable. And so I think bringing that up in the exam room, showing it's just as easy as this, it doesn't take a lot of time, and you're doing a good job is really reaffirming to that caregiver. But to your question, how to do things creatively, I am a big proponent of incorporating what you're trying to do with your child into tasks of everyday life that you are already doing. So if you, for example, are washing dishes and your child is in the kitchen near you, either in a high chair or sitting at the table or playing on the floor with some pots and pans or what have you, narrating what you're doing, living your life in a sense as a sportscaster, I think is a great way to be creative and encourage that reading. So you can say, I am turning on the water. Whoosh, look at how fast the water is coming out. And now there's bubbles everywhere. I'm scrubbing this plate. This plate is a circle. I mean, there are just so many ways to make these mundane activities fun. and your kids are always listening. They're always hearing that. Playing a lot of times, just during bath time or shower time, I would put either some shaving cream or some of those like sudsy bath stuff down and let my kids make circles, make squares with their finger. And then if they got a little bit older, I would say, let's make the shape of letters. So before we would get in for the bath, we would put a little bit of shaving cream down on the counter. We would spell out their name and letters, and then we'd wipe it away and get in and wash clean. Taking objects that you would normally play with and replacing it with a book. So if you were going to play peekaboo or hide and seek or a scavenger hunt, but now instead of looking for some other object or looking for the person who's missing, you're looking for a book who's missing, is missing, I should say, not who. And so as a full-time mom and a full-time job holder, to me, this was a great way to play hide and seek with my kids. I would hide, for example, the very hungry caterpillar. I would say the caterpillar is missing. Go find the caterpillar. And then I could probably fold half a load of laundry. While my child was finding that book, bringing it back to me, we'd read a couple pages of the book, and then I'd go hide a different one. So there's lots of ways to be creative there.
I think you just gave parents right now like the golden gift of time to just even breathe and take a sip of their coffee. And like you said, get that laundry done if they're doing laundry. Just really, I find that so like to me, it's comical, but it's probably such a golden nugget that really, it's like, wait, what? Tell them to go find the book? Genius.
Yes. I can't tell you the number of times that my husband or I have been trying to get dinner on the table. And we will say, we're going to have a contest now. The first person, now my kids at this point were a little bit older, maybe, that 5 to 6 year old range. This was a big deal during the pandemic when we were all home. The first person who can go and find me an item that starts with the letters A, B, C, D, and E, go find 5 items, bring them back to me. Whoever can do that first will win a prize. And they got really creative. One of my middle son was in first grade when school shut down, and he went off on his own, and he came back and he had drawn a picture of elephant. He was like, E, elephant. And that kept him entertained for a while. So lots of creative ways to incorporate that without just sitting down and saying, now we're going to do a workbook. Now we're going to hand over handwrite together. Now we're going to read together.
I'm just mind blown. Wait. So there's so much creativity that comes to this, but these are just small little things. I mean, I'm hoping that like, just because I'm not a parent with kids, that I'm not the only person that thinks this is like amazing and genius, but I think it's just such a golden way to like really help your kid to feel the creativity that's not so much instilled by connecting to a device.
Yeah.
Because I think that that's what I see the most now. I mean, props and shout out to all the single parents and the parents who, yes, maybe it's dual household, both parents or caregivers are working, but it's such a hard thing when you have more than one child to do all the things and thrive as a person, as a human, as a parent to ensure that you're doing the best. But when you can do this small little thing that gives you 15, 20 minutes to get that thing done while also helping your kid think critically, there's not a lot of critical thinking, but it's really engaging in critical thinking. And also providing an opportunity to be creative. Like you said, the letter E, that child went and drew an elephant because that's and that probably would have took them, 20 minutes to do that? At least.
I would say maybe 10. You're exactly right. And what are we accomplishing here? We're giving them independence. We're showing them that we trust them to walk around the house alone. We're giving them the pride in completing a task. They're having fun with it. We're praising them and laughing when they come back with what they've done. There's so much character building in that, along with literacy skills. And don't get me wrong, my kids absolutely use screens. This isn't like, we're doing this all day, all the time. I don't want people to think I'm not like everybody else. But this is a wonderful opportunity to engage. And at the time, even my oldest child, who was in 5th grade, was still really excited about who doesn't love a scavenger hunt, who doesn't love the idea of a prize. It was fun. And the prize was like a Hershey Kiss. It was not a big thing, but they were so excited about it.
It doesn't take much. It really does not take much. I mean, I can tell you that going back to the screen thing, I remember my brother, he's got 3 kids, one who just turned 20, one who is now going to be, 12, and the one just turned 10. And when the two younger ones were little, they were trying to be mindful of like the whole idea with having a device, the iPad and the television, and engaging more in the conversation of like, go read. But now that I'm like hearing you give all these like golden nuggets away, I was like, wow, those would have been really much more helpful for them. But I mean, I see my nieces always like doing something creative. These kids are nonstop between the activities and all the creative learning. So I give them tons of props, but it's a hard balance, and you almost like don't know what is the best thing to do except doing your best with what you have in front of you, right?
Exactly. And, everything in moderation. There are some really good things about screens. There are some wonderful, wonderful children's programming opportunities out there. I think that for some kids now, especially since the COVID shutdown, sometimes playing a game with their friends is a way to socialize and creatively think. So I think there's room for all of that. And then I will also say with engaging literacy at home, like anything, I tell parents, if you want your child to do it, they need to see you doing it too, right? You can't tell your child to eat broccoli if you're not eating yours. You can't tell your child not to text and drive if they see you texting and driving. If you want your kids to be interested in literacy, they need to see you being interested in literacy as well. And this could be flipping through a magazine. This could be making the time once a month to actually go into your public library and they see you perusing the shelves just as they do. Even if you don't have the time in your life to read, or even if you're listening to audiobooks, which is still absolutely reading, by pointing out to your child, like, oh, I'm listening to my book right now. That's all ways to say this is important to me for you, and it's important to me for me.
I love that. Such a beautiful, gosh, you're full of golden nuggets. I'm obsessed with talking with you right now. I have a question for you, Jaclyn. So this one is still literacy, but I think one that's really important because I'm sure parents are probably thinking about this as their children are getting to the age of now they're in school and they're having to do writing. So how can play be used to strengthen fine motor skills and their connection to writing?
Absolutely. A great question. When the kids are pretty young and you're thinking about writing as a buildup of hand strength, playing games where they have to use things like tongs or tweezers to pick up items and move them back and forth is a great thing to do. Also, stringing beads or stringing macaroni or anything you have at home that has a circle through it, that can be a great way also of building up that dexterity. And once they're starting to use pencils and crayons, allowing them to scribble and draw creatively. When you really get into actual writing for writing's sake, letters in the right order, making sure that they're spaced apart, etc. Again, practicing with the shaving cream like I talked about, having them write with their finger, playing in sand, finger painting is all a great way to learn those shapes. I think pointing out the letters and the shape correspondent. So for example, A looks like a triangle, O is a circle, right? P has a circle and a straight line, stuff like that. And then having them write stories. For a while, we had little mailboxes in our house. Everyone had a mailbox, and you could send your brother or your parent, in the case of our house, mail. So you would write a little note to them and stick it in their mailbox. That was kind of fun. I have my kids, whenever we go on a vacation or the times where perhaps they're staying with someone else and my husband and I are having a brief getaway, we'll write a journal. So we'll write a journal of what we're doing, and we have them write a journal of what they're doing. My husband's a teacher and he leads a group of students out of the country every year, once a year. He's gone for 10 days every February. So while he's gone, we write a journal of what we're doing while he's away, and then he writes one. And when he comes home, we collaborate on that and get to share them. So that's practicing writing. It's practicing narrative of beginning, middle, and end. And also just pretend play and telling stories and making up nonsense stories with your kids, even though that's not physical writing, is still giving them that structure of story. Here's how a story typically starts. At some point, maybe there's a conflict. Then there's the resolution. It gives them that pattern, that scaffolding to base on.
I love that so much. And it's also like, it's enhancing and kind of reinforcing what hopefully is being taught in school, in that developmental piece of like understanding how the pieces of literacy are interconnected with the idea of learning and putting pen to paper or whatever writing utensil you're using, and getting that creativity to continue to foster growth and imagination and development.
And again, none of this has to take a lot of time. For a while, before my kids went to bed every night, they filled out a gratitude journal, I guess you could call it, but it was really just a notebook of something that made me happy today. And they would just maybe write one word, like it would say popsicle, or it would be a picture of a swing, or, just something, putting pen to paper, engaging in that activity of thinking, writing, and then reflecting afterward.
Teaching kids mindfulness starts young, and it is gratitude 100%. I could say that much, but it's definitely developing mindfulness and understanding how when you think more about the things you do, what impression does it leave you with, or what impression does it give you? I know we're coming close to time. I want to ask 2 questions. The first one I want to ask you is, what are some key takeaways that you would want our guests and listeners to have, not just from our conversation, but from your experience and expertise that could be a win for them with their children?
Absolutely. I think that caregivers should know that on the whole, they're probably doing a very good job. I think that we are all putting so much pressure on ourselves. And if your child is fed, if they have at least 2 pairs of clean clothing to alternate on every other day of the week, and if you are there for them and love them, you're doing a good job. And adding all of these other things into it, they can be done without a lot of money, without a lot of time. The most important thing is that you're showing up. And I think when someone said that to me, I thought, well, I'm not showing up enough. I'm dividing myself among my 3 children. I work a full-time job and not giving them enough of me. Showing up could be just 5 minutes. Showing up could be a quick note in their lunchbox that, again, they have to read. Showing up could just be saying, I had a very busy day today, but you are very important to me and I love you so much. I mean, that's really what they need. And showing them the skills that they can use later. We recently went on a road trip and my kids kept saying they were bored. And I kept telling them being bored is really good. That's when your brain has the opportunity to think and relax. And my husband and I started rattling off all the things that we used to do when we were bored in the 80s and 90s and had nothing else to do in the car. And they started naming objects outside the car. They started playing games. I think those are skills. They don't have to be comfortable 100% of the time. They don't have to be happy 100% of the time. You're just giving them the skills to find that for themselves. And if books and reading are a part of it, all the better.
I say this every time you say something, but I love that so much. I mean, I do. Yeah, we didn't have technology as kids growing up, so we had to figure it out. And our parents said, "We'll figure it out," and that's what it came down to. And it is true. I see my niece who is 11, going on 12, and she struggles with being bored. She cannot sit still. And I see that also happening with my other niece, who's so sassy, and she's which is just comical. She will read out loud until the point where she's just done. But it's such a interesting dichotomy to think about how boredom should be uncomfortable, and because it's uncomfortable, it's an opportunity to develop and grow into that.
Yeah.
Wow.
The minds were blown when we told them we used to watch 2 drops of water on the window and see which one would fall down the fastest. They honestly, my oldest, who's now 16, he was in the back of the car and he was like, guys, I feel bad for you.
Oh.
We turned out all right.
Yeah, we're doing just fine. Look at you. Yeah,
Exactly.
Last thing, where can people find you and connect with you? And I say this because you do so many things that I think is worth for people to know how to connect with you.
I appreciate you asking. My social media presence has shrunk recently, just in an effort of self-protection from all of the stuff that I didn't want to see. But I'm on Instagram and my handle is @Readiatrician. So it's READIATRICIAN. So it's like pediatrician, but with read in the front. And I also have a website that is long overdue for an update, but it is www.readiatrician.com. And on there, it has book reviews, which I don't even call reviews because I only write about books I really like. So they're more book celebrations and lots of tips on how to engage kids in reading at all ages, at all developmental levels. And if you have a child who is hearing impaired or has a visual issue or has ADHD or is on the autism spectrum, specific tips on how you can engage with them with reading.
Wow. Well, we'll be sure to include all those links in the show notes for people to go follow you and connect to you and visit your website. Jaclyn, thank you so much for this amazing conversation, of the opportunity to connect with you and for you to share so many wonderful golden nuggets of like, how can parents really connect to play and learning with their kids and activities for literacy. I think it's just so many things that they can do that ultimately don't have to feel like it's a heavy lift for them, and also free. Like free is the thing here, right? Free.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I appreciate you. Thank you so much for the time today. And I hope to have you back on again very soon.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
And if you enjoyed this episode today, be sure to share it with someone, let them know where you found it, and make sure you share it with all your friends and family. Thanks so much for joining us on another episode of Literacy Launchpad. Until next time, have a great day.